How does the CEO of one of the biggest car companies in the world go from private jets and press conferences to hiding in a box smuggled across borders like a fugitive?
The dramatic escape from Japan of one of the most famous auto executives in the world.
This is the real story of Carlos Ghosn. The business genius who built a global empire was arrested in Japan and then pulled off one of the boldest escapes in corporate history. A man once held in the highest regard by Japan was now wanted by Interpol. Let's go back to the beginning. Carlos Ghosn was born in Brazil in 1954 to Lebanese immigrants. His childhood wasn't easy. At just 6 years old, he suffered from a severe illness after drinking contaminated water. He almost died. His mother, desperate for better healthcare, moved him back to Lebanon, where they lived through civil unrest and instability. Despite the chaos, Ghosn excelled in school. He eventually made his way to France, attending one of the most elite engineering schools in the country, École Polytechnique. For a kid from a struggling immigrant family, it was a ticket to a new life. After graduating, Ghosn joined Michelin, the French tire company, and quickly made a name for himself. He slashed costs, boosted profits, and rose through the ranks at lightning speed. At just 30 years old, he was put in charge of Michelin's South American division. His task? Turn around a failing business during an economic crisis. He crushed it, and his reputation grew. In 1996, Renault hired him as an executive vice president, but it was his next move that would make him a legend. In 1999, Renault formed an alliance with Japan's Nissan, which was drowning in debt and facing bankruptcy. Renault sent Ghosn to fix it. At the time, Japan's corporate world was rigid, traditional, and deeply skeptical of outsiders. But Ghosn wasn't just a foreigner. He was a foreigner telling Japanese executives they were doing everything wrong. He shut factories, fired tens of thousands of employees, eliminated decades-old supplier relationships, and within a few years, Nissan was making record profits. In Japan, Ghosn became a celebrity. They literally had comic books written about him. His leadership was studied in business schools. He was one of the first foreigners to lead not just one, but two Japanese companies at once, Nissan and later Mitsubishi. By the 2010s, he was managing almost 500,000 employees across the globe and was earning tens of millions of dollars per year. But as the spotlight got brighter, things came out about him that would turn his life upside down. On November 19, 2018, Carlos Ghosn boarded a flight to Tokyo after receiving an invitation by senior executives at Nissan. It was a high-level meeting. What he didn't realize was that this meeting was a trap. His plane landed at Haneda Airport in Tokyo, and as Carlos stepped off the plane, he was met by authorities who arrested him. This came as a shock, but things just got worse from there. He was taken into police custody, where he was kept for 23 days straight, undergoing lengthy interrogations without a lawyer present. They were trying to get a confession out of him. After his court hearing, he was arrested 3 more times and spent a total of 108 days in police custody. I bet you're wondering what his charges were. He was accused of underreporting nearly 80 million in income and assets. He was also charged with using misappropriated funds from Nissan to purchase 6 houses and a 120-foot-long yacht. But how did he do this? Well, Ghosn set up around 40 shell companies, which are essentially fake businesses which he could use to launder money. Using his prestige status at Nissan, he would authorize transactions to these companies for things like consulting and dealership duties. Due to his trustworthy status, these transactions were never questioned. But where was the money actually going? Basically in Carlos's pocket. Because he owned these shell companies, he would buy whatever he wanted with the funds that were sent by Nissan. Because these businesses were spread across the globe in regions with little tax regulation, the operation was pretty much untraceable, until of course a whistleblower blew the lid off. So he was released on a $9 million bail with strict rules. One of those rules was that he couldn't have any contact with his wife. This was the last straw for him, and what happened next will truly blow your mind. It was a cold winter day on December 29th, 2019, while Carlos sat waiting at a train station in Tokyo. He was still under strict court rules, so tensions were high, especially because his celebrity status could give him away at any moment. In fact, one of those rules that he was permitted to leave Japan and couldn't travel within the country without court authorization. Regardless, he got on that train with a crazy plan up his sleeve. Months earlier, he had been in contact with Michael Taylor, a former Green Beret, and his son Peter. They had come up with an insane plan to transport Carlos out of Japan and into Lebanon, where he couldn't be extradited. During the winter months in Tokyo, traditionally, there are a lot of concerts going on. So Carlos agreed it would be a good idea to hide in a music travel case, one just like this. The first phase of the plan was getting to the box without being noticed. He had changed into casual clothes earlier that day, and some sources say he put on a surgical mask to conceal his identity further. He arrived in Osaka, where he traveled to the Stargate Hotel, which was right by the airport. Here, Michael and Peter Taylor were waiting with the box. They were posed as musicians. The Taylors left the hotel and transported the box successfully through the airport without any suspicions. A private jet had been waiting for them and they loaded the box on board. Carlos was almost free. The jet took off on time, flying through the night with a layover in Turkey. They finally landed in Beirut, Lebanon the next morning. Ghosn couldn't be more relieved. Now in Beirut, Carlos was ready to face the world. He held a press conference on live TV which lasted over 2 hours. He called the Japanese legal system rigged and said he hadn't fled justice, he had fled injustice. He also said he was the victim of a corporate conspiracy to destroy his career. And just like that, he went from being one of the most powerful men in business to a real-life fugitive, watching the world from the safety of exile. Japan was furious. Interpol issued a red notice, a global request to arrest him, but Lebanon refused to extradite. Michael Taylor and his son were later arrested, extradited to Japan, and sentenced to prison for helping Ghosn escape. As for Ghosn, he's lived in Lebanon ever since, still denying all charges and even launching an executive training program. Even after all that's happened, his entrepreneurial spirit still lives. If you want to hear another story of a millionaire CEO doing something insanely illegal, check out this video on John McAfee, the man who created the billion-dollar antivirus software company. See you there.